Hey, what's up? This is Chosen, and in this video, we are on the test server to jump in and test Rule the Huntmaster as soon as possible to get some content out there for you guys. I will have an infographic about this champion. We'll go over masteries, booking, kit analysis, stat analysis. I'll show you him in action. We'll talk about how he pairs with Thea. We'll talk about how I would grade him as a champion. If I would change anything, we're going to get into all that stuff, so let's get into it. Alrighty, so first of all, Rule is going to be in the index under the Dark Elves, and up here at the top right, the Spirit Affinity Attack Champion, Rule the Huntmaster. Now, as always, for my champion guides down below in a pinned comment, nice and easy to find, I will have the infographic that shows you kind of a snapshot of the champion. But the one thing I like to always mention, do not blindly copy these masteries. This guy has a few different ways you can build him. This is if you're trying to do a lot of damage for like dungeon waves and maybe in the arena. You would go with the Helm Smasher type stuff, but there are other ways to build this guy. You can go more of a support route and take like Eagle Eye. So don't blindly copy those, but that's the masteries you'll see in this video. But again, that'll be down below, and let's get it put away so we can dive into some analysis here. So first, let's go over the base stats. We've got base HP is pretty low at 13.5. The base attack is awesome, 1700 almost. That's a really, really good base attack. And his multipliers are decent, but we'll go over all that type of stuff. The base defense is almost 1000. That's okay, pretty par. Same as 97. It's a little tad on the low end, but anywhere between 95 and 100 is pretty acceptable. The crit rate of 15 is normal. Crit damage, he actually gets the buffed version of the 63, which I like on him. The resistance of 30, accuracy of 10, that's all pretty normal. So in terms of stats, the base HP is a little bit low, and the base attack is very high. Everything else pretty normal. Then as we dive into the kit analysis, we'll start at the A1. It's going to be attack one enemy, and I know you like to know the multipliers. They are on that infographic. You'll see the 3.2 times one enemy. That is the multiplier. So a pretty decent multiplier for the A1 when you combine it with the fact that he has a very high base attack. Not bad damage output for an A1. It is a single hitter, which is unfortunate, but it does have a chance to book this up to a 65% chance of placing the big version of defense break for 2 turns and transfer a random debuff from the champion onto the target if they're under a hex, and he does kind of synergize that with some of his other kit here. Then we dive into the A2. Again, we'll pull up the multiplier. It is a 3x AoE, but there is a capability to place an extra hit if they're under hex, because it is an AoE that you see places extra hit on enemies under hex debuffs. And then we'll also ignore 25% of each target's defense if there are 4 or more enemies under a hex debuff, which is just enough for like the arena. You're going up against 4 opponents. You got hex on all of them. Boom, he'll ignore. Basically get a free savage set and place an extra hit. So if you hit these different checkpoints, can definitely crank out a lot of damage with the A2 here. Then for the A3, we're going to go place a 50% increase accuracy buff on all allies for 2 turns. Then place a hex debuff on all enemies for 2 turns. So there you're getting the hex that'll synergize and help him kind of come through the next turn and get all that extra damage. Then also going to place a perfect veil buff on this champion for 2 turns. And for the champion's turn meter by 50%, we can book that to a 4-turn cooldown. And I think I forgot on this one, we can book it to a 3-turn cooldown. So not bad in terms of a rotation. You've got default, 3-turn, 4-turn, and then we get a passive, decrease the speed of enemies under a hex debuff by 5%. And decrease the resistance of those enemies by 10%. So we're getting even more of an accuracy buff. We get the accuracy buff from the A3, and then we'll also get the passive that's going to decrease the res of our opponents, which in turn kind of buffs our accuracy a second time there. Also increase the damage of enemies under hex. Also increases the damage enemies under hex debuffs receive by 10% and decreases the value of the heals they receive by 30%. The effect does not stack if multiple rules are on the same team. That's pretty normal. They always have that caveat for kind of some synergistic passives like this, where they say multiple champions won't like proc that effect in the same team. Then we get an aura of increased ally crit rate in all battles by 20%. So that's your refresher course on the kit in general. We're going to do a deep dive into talking about some of this stuff, and I'll get you my final thoughts on all of this and if I would change anything a little bit down the road. But now let's head on over to the rule that I have got built, and we'll talk about the gearing, the booking process, and the masteries. All right, here we are with the rule that I have got built on the test server, and I went with Relentless and Perception because I wanted to test getting him an extra turn, because his AI will prioritize this A3, where he places the increased accuracy buff, and then he also hexes all the enemies. And then we turn right around and get him an extra turn and let him do this AoE massive hitter that places an extra hit if they're under hexes and is going to ignore defense that he just did from the A3. So I thought that would be a fun thing to test out, to be able to see how hard he hits, instead of just having him built as a support that sets up like Thea to do some nuking. So that was the thought process behind testing him out in the Relentless build here, and it's a pretty decent hybrid build of decent speed, accuracy, and then you know, getting some attack to do some damage, but also bumping up the toughness just a little bit. And if you want to see the total stats on how this build shook out after being built, here you go. The HP is definitely a little bit low. That's something that would have to get raised up. And then you've got the 4,400 attack. You'd probably have to sacrifice something. That is the tough thing with his base HP being so low, is it's tough to get that HP up over 30k. You got to kind of prioritize it a little bit, because that 13,500 base is super low, so it can be tough to get him damage, or tough to get him toughness in order to be able to survive. But there you can see the rest of the stats there if you want to compare it to your rules. So that's going to lead us into the gearing. You know, you're gonna want accuracy so that he can place these hexes and stuff, and the decreased defense on the A1 and stuff. So accuracy banner, totally good choice there. Now on the amulet, this is gonna determine where you go with your build. Do you want defense or HP if you're building him more of a support, or do you want crit damage if you're building him more as a damage dealer? There's a couple different ways you can go, and you can make a case for both. So just kind of, you know, make sure and pair that in tandem with your gloves. Typically, if you're going to crit rate or crit damage gloves, probably go with crit damage amulet. If you're going with toughness on your amulet, go with toughness on your gear, like your chest and your gloves and stuff. But then the ring, you can make an argument for all of them again based on how you're going to build him. Then the boots, I would say under almost all circumstances, you're going to want speed with your best blend of some attack and some toughness. I mean, all the stats can pretty much be relevant on this guy. I would say boots are mostly going to be speed, though. Again, the chest is going to synergize with your gloves and your amulet. You got to ask yourself which build you want to go for. Otherwise, you can make a case for a defense and HP if you're going to build him as a support. The gloves, there you see, I went with the damage route, so that's why they are crit damage. Top ones are pretty simple, but if you want to see them, I will cycle through here really quick, and then we'll talk about the booking process. And I would say it's pretty normal for this guy. He does take 11 books, which is honestly a little bit on the low end, which is good. They've been releasing champions that take 11, 13, 16, 18 books with Pixneal. So 11 books is a little bit on the reasonable side in terms of legendaries we've been seeing come into the game. And you probably want to get the cooldowns of the A2 and the A3. Even on the A1, like if you want to save a book or two on the A1, go ahead and book him for 9 or 10 if you get some decent RNG and you grab your cooldowns on your A2 and A3, and then the passive doesn't have any books. So if you're going to be using this guy a lot, you could argue it makes sense to spend the 8 to 10 books to go ahead and get the cooldowns you need on the A2 and the A3. So for the Masteries, I moved myself. That way I'm not kind of blocking stuff here. But yeah, this is a pretty standard Mastery setup for a debuffer that you want to do a little bit of damage. That's why we got the Master Hexer. We went down the support route, and then we took the Helm Smasher there on the bottom. So if you're building him as a support, you're definitely going to do something different. But if you want him to be kind of a hybrid, general utility, damage dealer build, these Masteries wouldn't be bad for that. As long as you're not using him in the Clan Boss, then you'd obviously want to go with War Master if you're going to be doing Clan Boss. Like if you're using him for early, mid-game, Clan Boss type comps because he places the defense break on the A1 or something, then definitely go for War Master. But this is kind of your general utility, hybrid, damage dealer Masteries. But now let's go ahead and show this guy in action and how he pairs with Thea and how they work together. We finally have somebody that can work with the Hex debuff mechanic. So we're going to go ahead, boost it up. Okay, we got Battle for some sustain, Lydia for some defense break. And then right here, you will see Rule is about to take his turn. Now, he will default to this ability right here that is going to increase the accuracy and then place Hex on all the enemies. So if I hit auto, he's going to do the A3 right here. So boom, we hit auto. And there you can see all the enemies are under a Hex debuff now. Arbor is going to go ahead, boost up. And we get Thea. This is where she is going to nuke because of the Hex being on all of the enemies. So it's kind of comparable to a Seer nuke, but instead of removing the buffs on your team, she's gonna nuke the enemy team and then clear the Hex. So it's a pretty similar mechanic to a Seer nuke. It just works in a different way in terms of the buffs that it's manipulating in terms of removing, but it's pretty comparable. Watch this damage. Bang. Pretty comparable to a Seer nuke. You got like those 250, getting close to 300k nuking coming through with that one ability, and all it does is remove the Hex. It left all the buffs on our team, and it left all the debuffs on the enemy team that weren't Hex. So yeah, if you get that set up, you can definitely crank out the damage. But now you might be asking yourself, well, what's it look like if I use Rule as the damage dealer and he hits the enemies instead of Thea nuking everything that has Hex and then removing it? Because once she removes it, now Rule's not going to get an opportunity to nuke things with that Hex. So now we'll pop this over to ×1, and I'll show you this is what happens when Rule gets to hit them while they have the Hex on, and he gets to do his A2 here. That is attack on enemies, place an extra hit. So he'll attack once, then he'll do a separate hit that kind of comes from a different angle, and then he'll get that ignore defense proc because they are on accuracy. So here you go. So what it's going to look like, he does the one hit, then the second one from another angle. And yeah, you can see he was getting up there close to about 100k. The Thea with the nuke was doing like 250, getting close to 300k on some of her nukes. So RUEL doesn't crank out the damage that Thea is going to when she nukes with those hexes, but he can do some decent damage when you get those things to line up. And this is what the numbers ended up looking like at the end of that run. But remember, this was in that wave 1 where Thea didn't get to nuke. I've seen a lot of runs where Thea puts out a lot more damage than RUEL. So it's just to show you that they can both kind of do a decent amount of damage when they're in tandem with each other. Because remember, Thea, she does place the hex with her A1. So RUEL will get extra AoE damage. He'll do that extra hit. He'll ignore some more defense, kind of comboing with that Thea A1. It's just a little bit unfortunate that Thea removes all the hex, because you really have to choose which one you want to feature, like which one's gonna get the damage proc from it. I guess in a perfect world, you would get the extra damage from a relentless proc from RUEL, so that he gets to hit after he places the hex. Then after that, Thea goes, and she also gets the benefit from that AoE hex and just slams everything down, and then they both kind of get that benefit. But if Thea goes after him, removes all the hex, then his next turn, he doesn't get the bonus. So it's a little bit unfortunate how it works, but they can kind of put out the damage here working in tandem with each other. And if you want to see what he looks like kind of solo in a setting that you've all kind of seen before, we'll throw him in 12-3 here in the end game. There's the hex. And then boom, there's the massive nukes. He is not going to have a problem with that. There's the A1 taking things down. And I mean, he'll probably be like a 25, 28, 30 second campaign farmer here. Not like anything special, but I'm sure he can get it done pretty easily, especially when you got him in decent gear. And he'll place the hex, and then boom, there's no way they're going to survive that. So yeah, 26 seconds here, farming in 12-3 brutal. He could do it for you, but he's pretty par for the course in terms of being a damage dealer. He's not going to be some S-tier campaign farm. I just wanted you to be able to see his kind of abilities rotate before we grade him, and then get into my discussion with his design. So all right, as we dive into the grades, campaign, I mean, he's a 4. He'll be an all right damage dealer. He's not really going to be a great, like a revive, support, progression, nightmare campaign, 3-star champion or anything, though. Arena, I mean, the increased accuracy is very, very handy. And if more things come out in the future that pair with Hex or something, he could really have a lot of impact. I'm going to go 4 for arena offense and defense, because he is pretty situational with that Hex. But that increased accuracy is definitely cool. But we've got other things that do that in the game. We just had a fusion for Yoshi. We've got a rare dwarf that does that. So I can't quite go 5 just because of that. He'll be pretty normal in all these keeps. He's mainly just going to be kind of a 4 in a lot of this stuff. He's kind of your normal damage dealer that can help out early to mid game when you need that accuracy. He can help out as well. So we're mostly just going to go here. Ice Golem, I don't know that he has, I mean, he's just kind of your par for the course damage dealer. I can't go like low or high really on any of this stuff. Dragon, the A1 defense break is pretty solid. Fire Knight, so again, he's only got a single hitter. His A1's attack one enemy once. But he could be pretty good for the waves, especially if you paired him with anything and he has the multi-hitter and stuff. Gosh, but yeah, I'm gonna have to go with he'd be like a 3, 3.5 in the Fire Knight. Minnow, he's fine, nothing special, nothing terrible. Spider, again, he can do really good with helping you manage spiderlings and stuff, but there's no HP burn, there's no like decreased speed, decreased turn meter or anything. So 3, he'll help you dealing with some of the AoE snowball, but that's about it. Clan Boss, he places the A1 defense break, but he's just kind of, that's really his only redeeming quality there. And then Faction Wars, he'll be all right. Nothing god tier, but we can give him a 4 in Faction Wars. He'll be decent for the Dark Elves. All right, so in conclusion, let's kind of wrap this all up and talk about my thoughts in totality after being able to test him and really doing a deep dive on him here on the test server. I'll pull up the infographic if you want to take a look at that while we are talking. But so in terms of pairing with Thea, I do think it's cool that they're trying to bring something to the game that is comparable to the Seer Nuke and kind of do it in a fun way where maybe you got an opportunity to set that up with 2 champions instead of like 3 or 4. You're placing a bunch of buffs and then Seer removes everything. So it is cool that we're trying to get new mechanics that can function like that, because it's a very like it's a very specific role that's kind of only it's hard to get. So it's good that we're getting other options for that. That's the plus I like. The other plus I like was the 11 books. It's not like 7 or 8, which would be definitely better, but it's a plus in terms that it's not 15 or something. And then his base attack is amazing at almost 1700. So there are some things to like. He gets that buffed up version of 63 crit damage. There's usually 2 ways the crit damage is going to go. Champions are either going to get 50 or 63. So he gets a super buffed up base attack and the buffed up version of the crit damage. So yeah, some things to like, but the things I don't like, I don't know that he's super game-changing or anything, but I understand that's tough. When you're going to release champions every 2 or 3 weeks, you can't keep breaking the meta every time, or else people are going to think it's pointless. I'll just wait until the next fusion, and maybe or I'll skip like 2 or 3, and then I'll just do the next game-breaking champion. So you have to release champions that are good, but not like so good they're just stupid or they're broken. So it is tough to get it right. I think Rule is almost there. I think he needs a little bit of love. I just think he's a little bit underwhelming. But I do recommend going for the fusion if you can, because I hate telling you guys to sit on the sidelines and not go after a fusion, because again, especially when something does a special mechanic like Hex, he may pair amazing with some champion down the road 3 or 4 months from now, and then you'll be like, oh, I wish I had a Rule that places that Hex, because this new champion would have paired insane with Rule, but I skipped out on that fusion. So I hate telling you guys to sit on the sidelines for fusion. So if you can, if it's realistic for you to go for the fusion, I would do it, but don't like break the bank and start being crazy, spending money like crazy wildfire to go for Rule or anything. I don't think like if you were ever gonna skip a fusion, I think this is one that you could justify decently, because he's a damage dealer, not a support. Well, I mean, he can be with the accuracy, but they kind of designed him as a damage dealer, so he's kind of this weird hybrid. I don't think he's going to be a super game changer, but I still recommend going for it if you can, because of that Hex debuff, and things could change in the future where he does some insane things in tandem. So all in all, I'll give their design to this guy like a C+ or a B-. I mean, it's not the worst I've seen. It's not awful. He's just missing that little bit, that little something that would bring him up to like a B+ or an A-, where I think he would kind of hit that sweet spot. With just a little bit of love, I think he could be a really good champion that fills a good role in the game as kind of a hybrid damage dealer that places the increased accuracy for the whole team, which really helps for certain builds, and then also placing the Hex to synergize with other people. With just that little bit, it would put him over the top, but as of right now, I would have to give it like a C+ if you made me pick one grade to nail it down to. But that'll mostly do it for my thoughts on Rule the Hunt Master. And let me know down below in the comments if you agree, disagree with me. I always enjoy reading your opinions so that I can learn from you as well. So as always, thank you for watching. Good luck in the fusion if you're going for it. Have a good rest of your day. Peace.